A seedy-looking little wizard was rattling armfuls of silver symbols on chains at passer-bys. "One for your little girl, madame," he called at Mrs. Weasley as they passed, leering at Ginny. "Protect her pretty neck." "If I were on duty," said Mr. Weasley, glaring angrily at the amulet seller. "Yeah, but don't go arresting anyone now, dear. We're in a hurry," said Mrs. Weasley, nervously consulting a list. "We'd be better to do Madame Mulkins first. Hermione wants the new dress robes, and Ron's showing much ado around his ankle in his school robes. And you must need new ones too, Harry. You've grown so much. Come on, everyone." "Molly, it doesn't make sense for all of us to go to Madame Malkin's," said Mr. Weasley. "Why don't those three go with Hagrid, and we can go to Flourish and Blotts and get everyone's schoolbooks?" "I don't know," said Mrs. Weasley anxiously, being torn between the desire to finish shopping quickly and the wish to stick together in the pack. "Hagrid, do you think?" "Don't fret, they'll be fine with me, Molly," said Hagrid soothingly, waving an airy hand the size of a dustbin lid. Mrs. Weasley did not look entirely convinced, but allowed the separation, scurrying off toward Flourish and Blotts with her husband and Ginny, while Ron, Harry, Hermione, and Hagrid set off for Madame Malkin's. Harry noticed that many of the people who passed them had the same hurried, anxious look that Mrs. Weasley had, and that nobody was stopping to talk any more. The shoppers stayed together in their own tightly knit groups, moving intently about their business. Nobody seemed to be shopping alone. "Might be a bit of a squeeze in there with all of us," said Hagrid, stopping outside Madame Malkin's and bending down to peer through the window. "I'll stand guard outside, all right?" So Harry, Ron, and Hermione entered the little shop together. It appeared at first glance to be empty, but no sooner than the door had swung shut behind them that they heard a familiar voice issuing from behind a rack of dress robes in spangled green and blue. "Not a child. In case you haven't noticed, Mother, I am perfectly capable of doing my shopping alone." There was a clucking noise and a voice Harry recognized as that of Madame Malkin, the owner, said, "Now, dear, your mother's quite right. None of us is supposed to go out wandering about on our own. It's nothing to do with being a child. Watch where you're sticking that pin, will you?" A teenage boy with a pale, pointed face and white blonde hair appeared from behind the rack, wearing a handsome set of dark green robes that glittered with pins around them on the edges of the sleeves. He strode to the mirror and examined himself. It was a few moments before he noticed Harry, Ron, and Hermione reflecting over his shoulder. His light gray eyes narrowed. "If you're wondering what the smell is, Mother, a mudblood just walked in," said Draco Malfoy. "I don't think there's any need for language like that," said Madame Malkin, scurrying out from behind the clothes rack, holding a tape measure and a wand. "And I don't want wands drawn in my shop either," she added hastily, for a glance toward the door had shown her Harry and Ron both standing there with their wands out and pointing at Malfoy. Hermione, who was standing slightly behind them, whispered, "No, don't honestly. It's not worth it." "Yeah, like you'll dare do magic out of school," sneered Malfoy. "Who blackened your eye, Granger? I want to send them flowers." "That's quite enough," said Madame Malkin sharply, looking over her shoulder for support. "Madame, please." Narcissa Malfoy strolled out from behind the clothes rack. "Put those away," she said coldly to Harry and Ron. "If you attack my son again, I shall assure you that it is the last thing you ever do." "Really?" said Harry, taking a step forward and gazing into the smoothly arrogant face that, for all its pallor, still resembled her sister's. He was as tall as she was now. "Going to get a few Death Eater pals to do us in, are you?" Madame Malkin squeaked and clutched at her heart. "Really, you shouldn't accuse. Dangerous things to say. Wands away, please." But Harry did not lower his wand. Narcissa Malfoy smiled unpleasantly. "I see that being Dumbledore's favorite has given you a false sense of security, Harry Potter. But Dumbledore won't always be there to protect you." Harry looked mockingly all around the shop. "Wow, look at that. He's not here now. So why not have a go? They might not be able to find you. They might be able to find you at Double Cell in Azkaban with your loser of a husband." Malfoy made an angry movement towards Harry, but stumbled over his overlong robe. Ron laughed loudly. "Don't you dare talk to my mother like that, Potter," Malfoy snarled. "It's all right, Draco," said Narcissa, restraining him with her white fingers upon his shoulder. "I expect Potter will be reunited with dear Sirius before I am reunited with Lucius." Harry raised his wand high. Harry, no, moaned Hermione, grabbing his arm and attempting to push it down by his side. Think, you mustn't. You'll be in such trouble. Madame Malkin dithered for a moment on the spot, then seemed to decide to act as though nothing was happening in the hope that it wouldn't. She bent towards Malfoy, who was still glaring at Harry. I think this sleeve could come up a little bit, dear. But it's just... Ouch, bellowed Malfoy, slapping her hand away. Watch where you're putting your pins, woman. Mother, I don't think I want these any more. He pulled the robes over his head and threw them on the floor at Madame Malkin's feet. You're right, Draco, said Narcissa, with a contemptuous look at Hermione. Now that I know what kind of scum that shops here, we'll do better at Twifflet and Toddings. And with that, a pair of them strode out of the shop, Malfoy taking care to bang as hard as he could into Ron on the way out. Well, really, said Madame Malkin, snatching up the fallen robes and moving the tip of her wand over them like a vacuum cleaner, so that it removed all the dust. She was distracted all through the fitting of Ron and Harry's new robes. Tried to sell Hermione's wizard's dress robes instead of a witch's, and then she finally bowed them out of the shop with an air of being glad to see the back of them. Got everything? Asked Hagrid brightly when they reappeared at his side. Just about, said Harry. Did you see the Malfoys? Yes, said Hagrid, unconcerned. But they wouldn't dare make trouble in the middle of the Diagon Alley, Harry. Don't worry about them. Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged looks, but before they could disabuse Hagrid for his comfortable notion, Mr. and Mrs. Weasley and Ginny appeared, all clutching heavy packages of books. Everyone all right, said Mrs. Weasley. Got your robes? Right then. We can pop in the apothecary and Eyelops on the way to Fred and George's. Stick close now. Neither Harry nor Ron bought any ingredients at the apothecary, seeing as they were no longer studying potions, but both bought large boxes of owl nuts for Hedwig and Pidgewiggin and Eyeloops at Eyeloops in Owl Emporium. Then, with Mrs. Weasley checking their watch every few minutes or so, they headed further along the street in search of Weasley's Wizard Wheezy's, the joke shop run by Fred and George. We really haven't got too long, Mrs. Weasley said, so we'll just have a quick look around then and back to the car. We must be close. That number 92, 94... Whoa, said Ron, stopping in his tracks. Set against the dull poster-muffled shop fronts around them. Fred and George's windows hit the eye like a fireworks display. Casual passersby were looking back over their shoulders at the windows, and a few rather stunned-looking people had actually come to a halt, transfixed. The left-hand window was a dazzling, full of assortment of goods that revolved, popped, flashed, bounced, and shrieked. Harry's eyes began to water just looking at it. The right-hand window was covered with a gigantic poster, purple like those of the Ministry, but emblazoned with flashing yellow letters. Why are you worrying about you-know-who? You should be worrying about you-know-poo, the constipation sensation that's gripping the nation. Harry started to laugh. He heard a weak sort of moan beside him and looked around to see Mrs. Weasley gazing, dumbfounded at the poster. Her lips moved silently, mouthing the name you-know-poo. They'll be murdered on their beds, she whispered. No, they won't, said Ron, who, like Harry, was laughing. This is brilliant. And he and Harry led the way into the shop. It was packed with customers. Harry could not get near the shelves. He stared around, looking up at the boxes piled to the ceiling. There were the skiving snack boxes that the twins had perfected during their last unfinished year at Hogwarts. Harry noticed that the nosebleed nugget was most popular. With only one battered box left on the shelf, there were bins full of trick wands, the cheapest merely turning into rubber chickens or pairs of briefs when waves, the most expensive beating the unwary user around the head and neck, and boxes of quills, which came in self-inking, self-spell-checking, and smart answer varieties.